Your comments before about cuts in the budget. Obviously, a lot of your appropriations subcommittees have been exploring ways to cut the budget, and their counterparts in the Senate have been alternatively talking about things that they want to spend money on. I asked President Negron a few minutes ago, how he would reconcile those differences, and he said that in his opinion, this is a pretty typical, these conflicts are typical, and he doesn't expect that they can't be worked out. Do you think they're typical, or does it seem like you're on more of a collision course?
No, I think they're typical. I really do. And I think if you look at some of his quotes in the past, President Negron has oftentimes said that just because something was put in the budget as a recurring issue 20, 30 years ago doesn't mean that it's still valid today. And we should look at those things, and if that means replacing them with stuff that's more beneficial to the people of the state, they're open to doing that. And I think we're on that same page.
Are you still have the same broad concerns about Donald Trump as a Republican? And give me an assessment, if you give us an assessment.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say this. If you would have told me 2 years ago that these are Donald Trump's appointments, this is his first swath of executive order overrides or reissuances, if you will, I could not be more pleased. I think his selections have been terrific. They're people that have understanding of the process. I think they're true conservatives, and I think that they bring a fresh look at all those policies, from everything from regulatory to educational to even in the intelligence area. I think his selections have been fantastic.
How about his governing?
I think today at 8 o'clock, my hunch is I'm going to be ecstatic with his first Supreme Court nominee. And I think that if I was to say, I don't know how many days he's been, is it 15, 14 days, whatever it might be, I'd give him an A+. I think those are issues that could easily be, we have 120 House members, 40 senators for those to bring up. I think that the House is going to be focused much more on less regulation, not more regulation.
Speaker, are you willing to bond for PICO projects?
Right now, we're not, we've publicly said, I don't know if you were there on Thursday, we're not bonding.
How about Amendment 2?
And I think the governor in his budget didn't bond either. So that was encouraging too.
Speaking of regulation, Amendment 2, where are you on the number of...
What's Amendment 2?
Joking. I read too much.
I concur with everything. I heard Senator Negron's response on my way before I came up, and I concur with Senator Negron on his response.
So how many licenses do you think?
I think that works.
That's a number.
I think that's the stuff that works through the process, and the process works. And I think that Senator Negron makes a great point. We've said it too over in the House, and that is that the people have spoken. We're going to honor their will, and we're going to do it in a manner that protects the state of Florida.
Is there any chance that the governor would get the same amount for Visit Florida this year as he did last year?
No chance.
But
we're negotiable.
Well, you described it, but you said we're not on a collision course.
Those aren't collision course. Those things exist all the time. So you have Gary. Those aren't a collision course. When you say collision course, I'm taking you guys to mean that somehow we're never going to, work it all out. I think that there's always collision courses between the two chambers in the House and the legislature and the governor, the executive branch. There's always those. So if you go back to just name any speaker, I can tell you where there's, go back to Johnny Byrd versus Jim King. One was going to do medical malpractice, the other wasn't. Ultimately they did a medical malpractice bill.
But basically, you just
medical malpractice bill.
keep saying no to everything. You just keep saying
no. No, that's not true at all. So I don't know how you say that. So far in 71 days, let me finish. In 71 days, we have written the most transformative, aggressive rules in the history of 50 states and 200 plus years of history. How many people voted for those rules? Unanimous. Not one question, not one debate, 100%. And guess what that was with? That was with the opposing party. That was Republicans and Democrats coming together, compromising, and doing something that was the most transformative ethics rules in the state of Florida. Last year on the budget, a lot of the questions you just asked me were, how are you guys going to get done in this session? The House is at 0. The governor and the Senate wanted. Did we get done? Did it all work out? And how many people voted on the budget in the House? It was almost unanimous. For the first time in how many speakers and how many Senate presidents,
You
it was
brought
almost
up,
unanimous.
you brought up ethics.
No,
Do you have any desire?
I've told you a thousand times there's good compromise and bad compromise. I'm all for good compromise. I absolutely despise bad compromise. Bad compromise is what's got us here today. Bad compromise is what has the voters absolutely in a justifiable tirade that government doesn't work for them, and they're right.
Do you have any thought about giving
Go ahead.
your job to Veronica some?
Joe, I'll answer that one. No, there's nothing wrong with my job in Broadcastle. I thought Joe did a great job of addressing the issue that he had. You know, there's no bill that I have filed that gives a specific appropriation to a client. And I think that Joe has handled that situation with great dignity. What I would say to the governor, what I would say, I've said to you guys, and we've had this discussion in the last year, and Larry Metz in the Public Integrity and Ethics Committee is looking at it. The real problem is job changes that occur during that legislative process when you have somebody whose background is marketing, hypothetically, and all of a sudden he's given a job and he is now the president of environmental policy for the Foundation of Great Environments. And he gets paid $300,000 a year, and then they start pushing. That's where I can tell you from being on the inside. That's where the corruption is. And when I say corruption is too strong a word. That's where the system is perverted. And so we have Chairman Metz and our Public Integrity and Ethics looking at how do you rein in the process, having these dramatic shifts in occupations and professions that clearly affect the outcome of the process.
So let's talk about John Stevenson,
and we'll look at
Foley
it.
and Lardner, and the legal
We already
bills.
did. We've talked about that. And we are all for, as we are, we put our own House rules, a 6-year ban on legislators from lobbying the process after they're done. You shouldn't have this revolving door. And that revolving door, as I've said in the past, should also apply to executive top agencies. How can someone in a top agency hand out hundreds of millions of dollars worth of contracts, billions of dollars in some agencies in contracts, and then all of a sudden they go out and now they work for the industry that they were regulated?
Let me ask this.
That's
Is
gotta
John
stop.
Stevenson a crook, or is he a smart lawyer?
No, I haven't.
Is Foley and Lardner a corrupt organization, or are they a bunch of smart attorneys?
No, the process is broken and it needs to be fixed, and we're going to fix it.
There's no bidding required for these law. The state engages in hires a lot of private lawyers for a lot of things. Some of that is under the executive branch. Should that be? There's no. Those contracts don't go out to bid. Should that be required?
I think that that's something we can look at. I think that when you're hiring an attorney on behalf of the taxpayers to fight for something that's the right of the state of Florida, that's as in most things, all lawyers are not created equal, and all firms don't have the same degree of expertise, which is why whether it's in engineering and contracts and all these things, we scrutinize the level of their professional history and how many bridges have you built, how many architectural things have you done, because if you just went on some of those things on the lowest bidder, you wouldn't be doing the best service to the taxpayer.
You mentioned 2 more guys, we gotta get moving.
Just run around, get some cool shots.
Come up here and give us a handicap of how things are going to work out during the legislative session. You have done the same thing. You've given us what you think is going to happen. We will not pass taxes. We will make these changes. And yet you have suggested this is going to be a transformative process. What is going to change if it is still top-down driven, where you get to dictate and handicap how things are going to, what the outcome is going to be?
Well, I think if that were I think we've gone at length and talked about all the ways that, and already all the ways it has changed. Show me a time that you have seen a set of rules that engage in that kind of non-top-down behavior ever before in the history of the House. Show me a time that chairmen were able to choose their subcommittee chairman. Show me a time that chairmen were able to choose the members on their subcommittee. You don't have to ask me, go ask them.
If the change,
no, I'm
if the
asking
outcome
there.
doesn't change,
Who else did that?
what's going to
What other presiding officer did that?
But you're still predicting the outcome.
What
is the same.
other presiding officer did that? If you can find that, so we've already put our money where our mouth is, and we've engaged in a non-top-down behavior that's never existed before, and it's working. You're seeing that kind of, I think, fervor of thought and ideas, and people more engaged in and knowing that they have the authority and the power, and people above them who will respect, honor, and and encourage and do whatever is necessary to assist them in cleaning up the forces that of the status quo or those things that are less than or at least clearly shady, and cleaning those things up. And now you're seeing them. You're seeing Chairman Trio sending a letter to all the university presidents and college presidents. When has that ever occurred before? Never. And it's being done in the first 71 days. Why? Because he knows he has that authority and he has the ability to go and act and do those things. It didn't exist before.
You
To
mentioned
that point,
KIP
the governor
and SEED
said
today and
that,
also on Thursday. Are you pursuing a proposal to try to expand their presence in Florida, or why those two organizations that you've mentioned?
Those are
by name?
very uncommon schools. I can list a bunch of them. There's a ton that are very, very successful, that have a tremendous history, decades-long history of success in lifting lower-income students to great heights and prosperity and college-bound college graduates. And so to the extent that those entities exist out there, what we're interested in doing is creating a fair, level playing field where those models can come into the state, are encouraged to come into the state and have the proper funding and the proper regulatory scheme that allows them to go out there and change those lives.
So take
I
over
appreciate it.
failing schools
Thank
and
you.
public
Mr.
schools?
Speaker, the governor seemed to say that if you allowed a vote on incentives, the members would approve it.